Yeah, I just want to start off with thanks for joining us. I think you're the I think you're the third show I've had. So we're moving along here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, sure, sure. So you're um one of those sports that was kind of a casualty of the COVID pandemic, with the NCAA canceling the whole spring season um back in March. Talk about how you handled those first few weeks with your program, your student athletes. How did you deal with that?
For sure. You know, I feel terrible for all the student athletes, in our program, all of our players, all of the spring sport athletes here at Whitman, everyone across the nation that's been impacted. Obviously, it's a really challenging situation. And from a pandemic standpoint, health comes first for everybody, individually and from a community standpoint. So the, the initial abruptness of when everything happened was challenging. We had just returned from Southern California. We were in the middle of a great week of practice. Finally had a couple guys get healthy, set to return, ready to dive right back into conference play at 500. Having Pacific come to town, who we had last played in the conference tournament last spring. Really excited, and then we show up on Thursday and everything is suspended from a conference standpoint. And, 48 hours later, a lot of our players are moving home, beginning of
Right.
spring break. So that was definitely a challenge. The abruptness of it was really tough, from a relationship standpoint for our guys. Not to be together anymore on the field was one of the most challenging aspects to all that. But our guys handled it remarkably. Incredibly proud of them with how they went about that transition. From knowing that we were probably going to have our season canceled and then officially canceled later on, and their mindset of wanting to help others, even in a time of need. That was incredible to see. Really spoke to the people and the guys that we have in our program. We immediately, kind of went to a structure of moving everything as virtual as we could, right? With Zoom and Google Hangout, Google Meet
Sure.
now. With the technology that our guys are always tuned into, it was a lot easier to do, to make that transition, even though it wasn't quite the same as being in person. And so, with that, we were able to set up a great structure of kind of how we continued baseball class, since our players get a credit for
Sure.
baseball in the spring. We had a daily theme, and we're able to check in at least once a week with our Monday message, a whole team meeting on Zoom, and also tie in a lot of our alumni too. And I think that really helped the situation for a lot of our guys, for us as a program, to continue to have the baseball aspect of things, even as times were challenging. Um,
Sure.
During spring break, when there was little academic work to be done, even though a lot of guys were preparing for after spring break and the transition to online classes. So, allowing guys to have that opportunity to still connect with each other, to still really have baseball at the forefront of their mind, to continue to learn through the game, to continue to impart a lot of the messages, that we talked about, from a learning standpoint, from a program standpoint. Before guys really dove into what it was going to be like with transitioning with their classes, and
Right.
so building that foundation the first couple of weeks was great. As challenging as it was and as tough as it was, not to be in person, it was a pretty good second place
Right.
in many ways. So, you know, we we've got a great coaching staff here. Really lucky to have Tommy and Nolan and Pete and Blake with us. And so, with their support as well too, we've been able to implement a lot of great things for our guys. Really with one goal, and that's to keep our guys connected. Provide opportunities for them to stay connected as much as possible. Obviously, not as regular by any means as being together at practice every day. Sharing the field together, being in the dugout. But we've been able to do a lot together as a team still, and especially in those first couple of weeks, trying to transition as quickly as we could was really important from a program
Right.
standpoint, and it's just helped lay the foundation for these last 6-7 weeks.
You talked about keeping connected. That was the second thing I wanted to mention. A lot of coaches were doing a lot of things on social media,
Hmm.
Zoom calls. You've done as much as anybody. Talk about some of the initiatives you've done, the Little League series, instructional video series. You've had Zoom calls with, as you mentioned, alumni, Blake Trinan, assistant coach. Talk about some of those things and the success of them.
For sure. Yeah, we've got great guys in our program, like I mentioned, and I love all our guys to death. It, One of the things that's been tough from a community standpoint for the past 2 years, 2 years ago with the inclement weather that we had, not being able to play at home because of the snow still in the field,
Sure.
which the whole region was impacted. And then this year with COVID-19, we haven't been able to run our annual Little League Jamboree or our annual Little League Spring
Sure.
Training
Right.
Camp. And that's one of the highlights of what we do in our program from a community standpoint. Uh, Lights are on at Borleski. Our guys are announcing names. The kids are on the field. It's just a great time. Hopefully for the kids in our community. All the little leaguers, but also for our guys. That they're coaching teams, they're running stations, they're high fiving kids. So not to have that interaction too, that's the fun part. You're sharing the game. You're teaching the game. You're helping to grow the game in your community. We haven't had that opportunity the past 2 years, and so last year we were able to send some guys out to Little League practices once the Little Leagues actually did start a little bit later on in April. This year, obviously, with everyone going home, we weren't able to take that same model, and so. With social media nowadays, we felt like it would be great to try to give kids something that they could do at home, in a safe way, especially with a lot of the quarantine measures that have been put in place, from government standpoint. That's been great. And so just trying to find a way for our kids to have that same impact, and also try to give our guys the same perspective that they would have had at camp, as a leader and someone
Right.
that a lot of those little kids would have looked up to, right? Like, even though it might just be in front of a camera, like how can you be a mentor and a great role model for kids in a teacher sense?
And they're
And so
running their own coaching session basically for a couple of
exactly.
minutes.
So that was great too, because I think that also helped to segue some of the conversations we had, moving forward from a baseball standpoint with our guys, texting videos to each other, right? Breaking down some things that we see on social media, just to keep that baseball conversation alive. But that's also something too, where I think it's great for our guys to have that perspective of, okay, like I got to teach a 4-step pattern in the infield. How am I going to actually teach this? And that gives them a little bit better perspective too on how
Right.
they actually learn. So that was a great part of it. And I think that's comes back to our core and our foundation of continue to learn on the field, like hopefully a great opportunity for our guys to learn what it's like to put themselves in that mindset. And then, to build off that, with some of the alumni events that we've done, just try to put together opportunities for people to come together, and got really fortunate to have Coach Trinan join us, for our first Whitman windup on Wednesdays, as we're calling it. It's just
Okay.
an opportunity every other week for alumni to sign in right before dinner for a social hour type event, to say hi to each other, catch up with each other, see how each other's families are doing. But then also got to hear Blake's story, about
Mhm.
him growing up in Kansas, eventually going to South Dakota State, getting drafted, signing with the A's, his time with the Nationals, back with the A's, and of course now with the Dodgers. And so just great opportunities, and trying to use baseball as a catalyst to bring people together, which is really what it's about, with what we do in our program.
You've been really hot on the recruiting trail. Not too long ago, we announced your incoming class.
Hmm.
Uh, well, a couple things with that. First, talk about the challenges of recruiting right now, and then we'll get into your class, and you can fill us in a little bit about them.
Sure. Yeah. Well, when you're on the road as a coach, there's some long days at camps, and uh, I love every minute of it. I love being on the road, getting out, meeting families, seeing kids. But it's tough to evaluate sometimes. When you see hundreds of kids over the span of a week, you really got to make sure that you highlight the guys that you really like, from a program ideal standpoint, guys who can come in and have an impact as a true student athlete here at Whitman with what we're looking for in our program. Um, a lot of it's the same, but now it's just watching video all day, to be honest. Kids and coaches, a lot of them have been extremely creative in how they've been able to share who they are as a player. Again, I feel for all the high school baseball players out there, because a lot of them didn't even have the chance to step on a field this spring. And so obtaining video has been a little bit more challenging for a lot of families. But a lot of them have been, extremely communicative in terms of just saying, hey, look, coach, I'm going to send you my video when I can get it done in a week or two. And that's been huge, and really appreciate the effort that a lot of coaches are going to, and a lot of families are going to make sure that these kids have an opportunity to pursue their dreams, if they want to play in college.
Sure.
So, that same camp model in a lot of senses, even though it's not official with a true camp, we're watching more video than ever with our coaching staff. And so that's something too. It's very much the same mentality, right? There's only so much that we can learn from a 90-second clip or 120 seconds with no game footage. But that's also where we're really thankful for the relationships that we have in place with high school coaches, club coaches, a lot of area scouts that we've been able to cross-reference with professional level who might not have been watching that exact player on the field, but had seen that team play before at an earlier time. So that's been really helpful as we look to build out our 2021 recruiting class. Right now we're still finishing out our 2020s, especially with some kids, making a decision a little bit later in the process with everything going on right now from a COVID-19 standpoint. And so that's our primary focus, is to finish out this 2020 class. We've got 7 great commits in the class right now. Excited about all those guys. From an impact standpoint, they're all going to have an opportunity to come in and compete right away and earn their time, just like everybody else in our program. But even more so, from a student athlete standpoint, each of these young men are great fits for our program and for Whitman, all in their own ways, which is pretty awesome to see, with their passions academically as well. So we've got a great group. We're hoping to add a few more guys to this class just based off of positional need moving forward. And a lot of those kids are students who've applied in the regular decision process and just taking a little bit longer to make their decision. So always recruiting, just in terms of trying to find kids who are the best fit for our program to help elevate our program. And then moving forward, like you said, in 2021, it'll be very interesting to see what this all looks like, from a recruiting standpoint.
Right.
Every state's different too, so California is different than Arizona, different than Oregon, different than Washington, different than Hawaii. So the access that we might have to watch some of these kids live might depend on the state that they live in. It might depend on the camp that they go to. There's just so many different factors right now. Almost like we're playing, like we got one guy left in the outfield, but there's 3 balls in the air. It's tough in that sense.
How about yourself? That's kind of the final question I have for you. We touched on your players in your program. How is you and your family dealing with the pandemic right now?
Well, I appreciate you asking. We're doing great. We're extremely blessed. We're really thankful to be healthy, be safe, be here in Walla Walla together. It has been a little bit different at home. My wife and I, thankfully, are both working from home the vast majority of the time. And so that's been really nice. We have a lot more time with our daughter, Evelyn, who's almost 2. But it's also an adjustment, with being on this call now. And my wife's on a call upstairs, and, I'm hoping that my daughter's still napping.
I know for me, it's sometimes you think like, well, I'm not in the office, so I have more time, but then your home becomes your office and you're working, and you kind of feel like you're like, wow, I've been working all day. Well, of course you have,
Don't work too hard, John.
That shouldn't surprise you that you're busy all day, because
it does really make you realize, like you're saying, how many hours we put in on certain days and at certain times of the year. But it also has given me some time to reflect too, just about that time. There's nothing that can replace that time, and why we really enjoy putting that time in. And it's all about the student athletes that we have the privilege of coaching. And that's been something where I miss our guys, getting to see them every day.
I know.
Obviously at practice, but even just guys stopping by the office, hey coach, do you have 10 minutes to talk about what I'm doing in class? Those conversations, those interactions, happen through text now. pick up the phone. We're Zoom calling with our guys just to check in, see how their families are doing too. But
Yeah.
yeah, miss that interaction. And from a timing standpoint, I'm willing to put in as much time as necessary to create the best experience for our guys. But at the same time, really thankful to have the opportunity to spend more time with family. To take our daughter and our dog for a walk. Midday as a
Sure.
break. It does give it a little bit different feel, but in a lot of ways, it's also great too. A lot more quality time in many regards. And with the weather being as nice as it is now, I wish we could be outside in the diamond. You could be up in the press box.
Yeah,
75
absolutely.
and sunny. But
I don't think we would
also,
have had any weather issues this
oh,
year.
it would have been great. It would have
Yeah.
been
I
great.
mean,
The grass is growing fast right now. That's for sure.
we've had about a week and a half to 2 weeks of nice weather,
It's
temperature
been
wise.
awesome.
Yeah. Oh,
It's been
well,
awesome. So,
yeah,
that makes us miss it even more. But like I said, it's been great to have more time with our daughter and more
sure.
family time. And um, a lot of our work as coaches, at least my work, is done at home in many
Mhm.
regards. Calls with recruits, Zoom calls with recruits. Um, so, the opportunity to continue to move forward with what we're doing is definitely there, even though the office looks a little bit different.
Well, fantastic, Brian. I appreciate you joining us. I'll let you go. But best of luck going forward. Stay
Thank you.
connected
You
with your
too.
team, and the season is almost over, actually, technically. So you'll be moving into the summer. So you're kind of your usual routine, but
Yep.
I know you're staying connected with your team. So, all right, thanks again, and
Thank you. Great
take
to see
care.
you.
All right.
We'll see you soon.